Welcome, welcome. I am super glad that you're here. There are a lot of places online that you could be. A lot of things to click, a lot of places to spend time and energy, and it's pretty neat that you found your way here. So welcome. My name is Jessica Smith. I'm a writer, a speaker, and creative. I live in California. I also work in corporate as a leadership development facilitator, where I still get to do my career coaching and all things career development, and I love it. It also funds my books, which for that I'm going to be forever wholeheartedly grateful. In this mini series, I want to take you through the past 7 years and connect that through to nature and how we can look to nature as a way, as a mirror, and as a learning tool and as a self-discovery method. I've been doing that for a while now, and I always find nuggets of wisdom built right into the world we live in, and that's nature. And it's fun to be here because it's been a while since I've been in podcast mode. I absolutely love it. It's one of my favorite mediums. So here I am dipping my toe back into the water of podcasting. So each episode I'm going to touch on one season. So we'll talk about the long winter that tested me, the spring that brought new beginnings, the summer of blooming into where I am today, and then we'll end up at the fall where wisdom and surrender are really my BFFs on either side, and leaning on both of them as my greatest teachers. I'm also going to share a suggested self-discovery prompt from my newest baby, 7 months old, my second book called Thank You for Dumping Me. And so I am super excited to share some of the self-discovery prompts throughout this iteration of episodes. There's a prompt in the back of each chapter in the book, which is related to the theme of healing, of angst, of, God, there's a lot in the book, so you have to check it out. Whatever's happening in that chapter, the self-discovery prompt relates to that. So it's not just not your typical memoir, if you will. It's a book where you get to use as a resource and try these on and relate them to what experiences you're going through right now in your life, whether it be a breakup or a brand new move or a career shift or an ending of anything. This book can really help support just when, that moment of when the unknown is knocking on the door, all that we thought was going to happen is not. And we kind of, at times, right, may feel like, the rug's been pulled out from under me. That's really what this book's essence can really help you support with. So we'll touch on those. I've got one dog-eared for today, and we'll go through that. But if we think a little bit first on nature, so nature moves in seasons, right? We know this. We experience this. We are in winter right now. I'm recording this in February 2025. And so we know what winter feels like from an intuitive and experiential way. There's always going to be in nature a time for shedding, right? There's going to be a time for stillness where everything kind of goes within, kind of closes up, for regeneration. There's a time also in nature for planting and blooming. So just like that, just like nature, we move through our own seasons of life. And I know what you're thinking. God, when is this winter over? I'm totally with you, because some last longer than we expected, and then some feel like they're never going to end, right? But all of them serve a purpose. And so let's go ahead and just dive into the first season I'm starting with, and that is winter. So if you know me, you know that I'm a very earthy gal. That's what will happen when you have, 5 planets in Capricorn. So Earth is just part of the DNA, literally and figuratively, and within my personality. So it's kind of from all sides. My moon happens to also be in the earthy sign of Taurus. So I look to nature often for clues and lessons, and I ask nature to show me, teach me about growth, teach me about change, show me just what resiliency means after weathering a storm, or, something taking it out. How does it regrow, replant, reroot, right? So we're going to have those seasons as well. So let's also just think a little bit about nature. It's probably easy to do right now if you're in the northern hemisphere because it's cold. The elements are harsh in winter. It's frigid. There's an element where all of the leaves fall off the tree, right? There's this bareness. There's this kind of starting over and blank slate that comes up. All of our body too is also, there's a lot of, my acupuncturist always talks about, there's this innerness that's happening with our organs, and a lot of the, just things are slowing down in all ways. And so I know that, that can be harder for some than others. For me, it tends to be a little bit harder. I have to put more effort into the going within and embracing winter. And I've gotten better as I get older, but it's still definitely a layer of life that I'm learning to work with and just partner with, if you will. Not fight against it, partner with it, right? Lean into it is a better frame for me. And we can think about winter too, like storms. So storms happen, right? Things get turned upside down. There's sticks and all sorts of crap in the street. Everything gets, wind will tear it, the strong winds. I just said that, the wind, have I mentioned the wind? The branches will fall. There may be hail or the water, rain going sideways, right? There's chaos. But while that can be annoying and a pain to clean up, it opens up an opportunity to assess. So when we do go to clean up, we can ask ourselves, do I still want this here? This little, bench got blown across the yard. Do I need this bench? Does it make sense having it here? And just reassessing as an opportunity, we can put things back in new ways, physically, mentally, emotionally. It'll force us to sometimes. But if we look to winter as an opportunity to do that, then we're going to appreciate it a lot more. So I think, I've had a very long personal winter for years. And back going in 2020, or in 2018, that's a new one. 2018, I think, is when this, my winter began. And it took years and years. And that happens. Sometimes we're in seasons for years due to what's happening in our personal life, maybe our what's happening physically, emotionally, relationship wise. That's okay. I don't think there is a certain amount of time that we're in each one. So that was the first kind of grappling I had to deal with. But, it started with this blindsided breakup. And at the time, this was May 2018, I was living with who I thought was going to be my guy forever. And so this breakup came out of nowhere and really took me out at the knees and erupted is the perfect word for this, because it erupted a year of healing and transformation. Did I go willingly? No, not really. Was I forced? Yes. Was I forced in all ways? Yes. And we can kind of cover a little bit of that as we go. But that first year, my skin erupted with the worst acne I've ever had in my life. I was embarrassed emotionally from the breakup and not knowing why it was happening, or just that embarrassment of being blindsided and not really having a say or being able to PR campaign the reason. My health took a huge hit. I lost my cycle for 9 months. I was diagnosed with an autoimmune disorder. Old coping mechanisms were coming back out of the grave and grabbing me down and pulling me down. So there was a lot of chaos and storm type stuff happening. And then at the same time, it also planted a seed for what would become later book number 2, Thank You for Dumping Me, because I was doing a ton of writing, because it's really the only thing I know how to do in turmoil and chaos is sit down at that computer and type it out. It's served me before. It serves me now. I know that's part of my That is part of my soul's processing. So the writing really planted a seed because I was writing all about the breakup. And honestly, all of it, this second book, a lot of it is just that journal turned into a book, verbatim. So it's pretty welcome to my diary kind of thing. So that was 2020. Gosh, I keep saying 2018. How bizarre. 2018. If we fast forward to 2019, I was still on a year, still in healing and transformation, but I was a little bit more resourced, I guess, at the time, because I wasn't in necessarily survival mode, right? I wasn't like shocked, confused, and dazed from the breakup. A little bit of time had passed. May to December, I actually got my cycle back on the solstice in December 21st, 2018. And that's also in the book too. I write about that coming of how that became to be. But so once 2020, gosh darn it, 2019 came around, I had a little bit more space and time in between the breakup and some of that emotional turmoil. And I was a little bit more resourced in terms of mindset and emotions, self-regulation a little, right? You don't need much, but I had the courage. I had the courage to start doing a little bit more. So 2019 was a huge year of self-growth and education, and still in this season of winter, still in this very much going within, regenerative, just regenerative is a really good word, just inward work. I worked with coaches. I took multiple online courses that blew the top off my, shook my snow globe, if you will, my life snow globe. So when I was shaking that, you can't see a thing. I forget where I heard that, but it's such a good visual for me. When life's just kind of like, you shake your snow globe and it's like, oh yeah, like when change happens, you can't see, so you got to give yourself some compassion. But these courses, questioned my beliefs, my values, how I see the world. I learned about topics like embodiment, somatic experiencing, EMDR, financial health, and financial awareness, and getting super cozy with your financial, setup, and getting super intimate with that, which had never been something I had learned to do. And once you get in there, that's a whole other can of worms. You can find themes, you can find all sorts of things in how you're spending your money. I got certified as a breathwork facilitator. I went to Peru for a spiritual evolution trip is still integrating, I think, to this day. I worked with multiple plant medicines, and ultimately was just navigating the question of who am I and what am I about. So 2019 was building that foundation, regenerating a lot of old thought processes, behaviors, outlooks, and all of that, just really transformative. And through, in still the season of winter. Come 2020, where, 2020 is actually when I started dating again. I really was able to finally get back out there and date, which, I could write a whole book on that. I swear to God. I had very many Sex in the City type nights where I'd come home after dates and just write about what happened. I felt very posh, I'd create nicknames for them. I still have all of that content, and it's just a trip and super funny. But the reason I was able to get back out there, I think, is because, again, I had created more of a sense of, okay, I know a little bit now more about who I am and what I'm about. And that is such an important key before you get out and start dating someone else, because how are you to assess another person, like who they are and what they're about, if you're confused about who you are and what you're about? It's going to be hard to know what you're looking for and what resonates, and just as important, what isn't for you. So doing some of that foundational self-discovery work, as I call it, is so important, and I think a superpower that people can have. The more that you know who you are, the more powerful you can be, and the more discernment you'll have on what you do and how you spend your time. And a lot of the self-discovery activities in the book help you to try those on. And they've been in my toolkit that I've gathered over the course of the last, I don't know, since I've been alive, right? So getting back out there and dating. And then, I don't know if you remember, but 2020, something big kind of happened. It's called, the pandemic. So the pandemic hit March, April. And at the time I was living in a 400 square foot apartment in Santa Cruz. And it felt extremely small at the end of the pandemic. Oh my God. Or at the start, I realized just how much I wasn't home, or I was, at work or at the gym, or I don't know, walking around the beach, but in Santa Cruz, the whole town was shut down, of course, like many towns. No one was going outside. I didn't have any friends. I had nowhere to go, and I was feeling super, super claustrophobic in this little den. And so what I did, though, was I kind of focused in on writing a lot. And I remember one of the days I sat down, I had nothing to do, right? Which is ideal for writing. But you actually, if you're trying to write a book or something, don't wait till you have nothing to do, because that will never come. This was a unique situation. But, had nothing to do. So I was like, okay, I'm going to sit down and write. And I wrote 30 pages straight. I wrote for 10 hours and wrote all about the days leading up to the breakup, the actual breakup, the week after, to the first steps getting up off the floor after that rug was pulled out from under me. All of this made it into the book. And I think that's why often I get feedback from people who have read it that say it reads like a novel. It reads like, a book that, my favorite novel that I couldn't put it down. It was a real page turner. So that's always a huge compliment. So that was my winter. That was a little bit of winter. We think about, the elements of winter: harsh, cold, going within, stormy, maybe some dark days, dark nights, longer nights than days, a little bit more solo time, right? I want to leave you with an activity. This is from the early chapters in Thank You for Dumping Me, and give you just an example on, something you can try on right now, today, later, as a little self-discovery activity. Okay, so this one is called, and if you have the book, it's on page 18. This is called Elevate Your Elevator Pitch, aka what to do when your entire identity is printed on your career fair name tag. So it relates to who you are and what you're all about. So I'm just going to read it from the book and, mark this down or screenshot the time right now in the podcast so that you can come back to it. Or you can always, of course, buy the book. So, okay, we're obsessed with the question, what do you do? But how much thought do we put into the question, who are you? Let's take the elevator pitch, the traditional elevator pitch, down a few floors. On a piece of paper, make a list with 2 columns. On the left, write down what you do, and on the right, write down why you do it, including the desired feeling you hope to gain. So there's no right or wrong way to do this. Just make 2 columns on your piece of paper. And I'm going to give you some examples of what I wrote when I was doing this activity. So what you do. Okay, I write books. Okay, why I do it. I write books because it's an opportunity for me to connect with the deepest parts of me, and in turn gives me an opportunity to connect with the deepest part of a reader. Okay, so that's just one example. Here's another example I wrote down. What do you do? Facilitate leader trainings. Okay, take it a step down, right? Step deeper. Why you do it. I facilitate leader trainings to support leaders in finding their unique approach. So leaders can be a whole leader, mind, body, soul, and support the whole employee, mind, body, soul. Okay, so those are just two examples. Okay, once you do that, now we're ready to take it a step deeper than that. So now we're going to ask, we've got a little bit about what we do and why we do it. And the what and the why are important because if you've heard of Simon Sinek, he is an author. He has a book called Find Your Why. Highly recommend it. It's on my book recommendation page on my website. And he has this concept of knowing your why. And he has this study that he did, and he went to a bunch of different companies, and he says, 90%, of companies, people within those companies are going to know what they do. But when you get down to the why they do what they do, that number is drastically smaller, right? It goes from 90 to maybe 10% of people know why the company does what they do. And so, he relates it to business and companies, but I'm relating it here to us as individuals. Okay, so we know what we do. Cool. Yeah, I'm a leadership facilitator. All right, but why do I do it? That's going to help anchor us into staying consistent and also keeping that North Star, ahead. If we've got eyes on the prize, eyes on the North Star, it's going to make keeping up with it and being disciplined and sticking with it a lot easier because we know why we're doing it and we can be anchored into that. So that's a little bit about the why and the what. So this next piece, so once you do that, we're diving deeper. Now you're going to list out answer the question, who are you really? And I've added some prompts here in the book. So I am someone who loves ... You'd fill it in. I am inspired by, fill it in. I am someone who makes space for, and then just I am. Just repeat that until you feel complete. And just have that list go as long as you want. And see what comes up. Because I think, every time I've done this activity, the longer I've done it, the deeper and more profound and more connected to my inner intrinsic soul, my heart, than when I first have the first couple lines. So here's some examples of what came up for me. I am someone who loves deeply. I am someone who is sensitive. I am someone who, I am inspired by people who radiate smiles when doing what they love. I am someone who makes space for others to share in meetings. I am someone who looks for the individual uniqueness of each person. I am someone who makes space for writing and solo time. So you just go, I am, and then finish that out. So here's the little closing bit that I've got on this activity. At first, you'll find things that make up your biography. Things like, I'm a graduate of this college. I'm a sister to these people. I'm this job. Keep going. You will get to the underneath part eventually. Things like, I am someone who believes life is one big experiment for self-discovery. I'm a deeply sensitive soul. I'm inspired by the wisdom that bubbles up from my jestness when I write. This is the place in your inner ocean that's calm. It's deep. It's untouched. Never mind the rough waves on the surface and allow yourself to tap into that deep, calm, untouched inner knowing. So that is winter. That is the activity. We'll be back with spring for the next episode, but I want to leave you with this one closing thought. While my winter lasted for years and it felt like it would never subside, spring eventually came. Okay? All right. Well, I'll see you back here for spring so we can get sprung. Have a great rest of your day, and I hope that something good happens to you today. See you later.